All right, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to some of you, and good night, I guess, for those of you in the Asia-Pacific region who have been joining us on these webinars. My name is Dave Hamlin with the Element 14 community, and I have the pleasure of introducing not only Ben Savage, who's with Lascar Electronics, but we're going to talk a little bit about the PanelPilot ACE, and Ben is going to do a fantastic job of giving us a brief introduction to the PanelPilot ACE software, and they're actually going to jump in and do some live demo with the program as well. So if you have any questions for Ben throughout the presentation, you can go ahead and feel free to ask it using the Q&A window on the WebEx application. If you have any technical issues or have a question for Premier Farnell directly, you can feel free to use the chat window and address that specifically to Premier Farnell webinars. We'll make sure that we get those questions answered for you. Now, this event is being recorded, so if you happen to, you need to drop off or just want to revisit some of the material, you can go ahead to the webinar event page that you registered from, and you'll see the recording later today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who's going to walk us through a great presentation on the PanelPilot ACE from Lascar Electronics. Ben, take it away.
Thank you, Dave. Hello, everybody, and thank you for taking time out of your days to join us on this webinar. Okay, I'm just making sure my volume is up. As Dave said, any questions, please type them in. We will try and get through them at the end, so I'm going to leave a bit of time at the end of the session to make sure we've got time to go through those. So as I say, today I'm here to talk about PanelPilot ACE. Now, PanelPilot ACE is a fairly unique solution. It's a hardware and software platform for industrial display applications. What it means is that we have a standard off-the-shelf piece of hardware, and let me just take off the protective covering on this. So this is the 4.3-inch capacitive touchscreen PanelPilot ACE display that we have available at the moment. So that is an off-the-shelf bit of hardware which acts like a blank canvas. And the unique thing, or one of the unique things about this range, is that we have free software that you can use to program that. What it does is it removes any coding. Everything is drag and drop. So not only are we saving time by creating an environment where things can quickly be put together, but we're also reducing the learning curve of getting to know the software. So it saves time both in the initial part of getting to know things and also when you actually experience and creating new projects. So I'm going to just start with a quick 2-minute video. This is a kind of explainer video, I guess, and it gives a quick overview of the range, and then we can go and cover in a little bit more detail shortly thereafter. So I'm going to have to go offline here, so I won't be able to talk for the next few minutes, so just listen to the narration.
Lascar Electronics introduces the PanelPilot ACE. One display. Infinite possibilities. PanelPilot ACE is a software and hardware platform for rapid development industrial display and panel applications. The display features a wealth of hardware interfaces, including 4 analog inputs, 8 digital I/O, 4 PWM outputs, alarm outputs, and serial interfaces including I2C, SPI, and RS-232. A 4.3-inch capacitive touchscreen with low-profile panel-mounted display will run any application created in the free Design Studio software. The design software provides a number of building blocks, allowing users to drag and drop elements onto the screen to quickly create advanced user interfaces. From background images to text elements, analog and bar graph-style meters, touchscreen buttons, right through to complex logic and math functionality, users can build up multi-screen interfaces without needing to write a line of code. The software includes an emulation suite to test the hardware input and output elements. A development board is also available to quickly test new products on the PanelPilot ACE display. Visit PanelPilot.com to find out how PanelPilot ACE can help with your next project.
Okay, I hope everyone was able to hear that okay. And as I say, it just gives a quick overview of what the range is about. So I'm now just going to talk a little bit more about the features of the hardware, which may be applicable to what you're going to be actually using the display for. So say here is the 4.3-inch display. This is the only display in the range at the moment. We will talk about some different sizes coming early in 2016. And you can see on the back here we have a range of interfaces which you can connect to your applications and projects. So you'll notice, I hope, from the webcam that the product has a very smartphone look. This is not a typical industrial display. It uses a capacitive touch screen. It has a very low profile. When it's sat within the panel, it sits maybe 2 mil proud of the panel. So most industrial displays that you would expect to see, quite bulky surrounds and so on. This is a big change to that. As far as analog inputs, we have 4 analog inputs. Those are 16-bit, bipolar, and there's a programmable gain amplifier on the hardware. So if you are measuring a voltage input of, let's say, 0 to 5 volts, the programmable gain amplifier will set that 16-bit range across those 0 to 5 volts. So you're getting the maximum resolution possible. We have 8 digital I/Os which you can assign as you wish, so you can start to bring elements of control and talk to other devices, or at least drive other devices with simple logic. And also 4 PWM outputs, so you can start to output analog type voltages. As far as serial communications, we have RS-232, which is live at the moment, and you can use that in the design studio. We're in development for RS-485, and following that Modbus, Ethernet, and I2C and SPI. All of those the hardware is capable of supporting. We just need to enable them in the software. So the software is in an ongoing development process. So touching on the software, and I think this is probably the key or the most unique thing about this platform is the software. For a start, it's free, so you don't need to buy any hardware, you don't need to buy the software in order to try it. So if today's demonstration, today's webinar is of interest to you guys, just pop onto the PanelPilot.com website and you're able to try the software indefinitely to see if it's going to be appropriate for your application or your project. So what it does is it allows you to quickly build up multiple screen interfaces using drag and drop functionality. So there's no coding. You're just using a mouse to move around, much like you would in a typical desktop publishing package. So as I touched on earlier, it means that the learning curve is greatly reduced, so you can get up to speed with creating projects in just a few hours. We do have a large amount of support material, learning material. We have a YouTube channel with, I think, around 20 tutorial videos now, and that gives you a full instruction on everything from the very basic stuff to more complex and advanced features that are available in the software. The software also includes a number of library elements, so we're not just providing you with a completely blank canvas. There are graphic elements, there are example projects, there's templates that just give you something to get started with. Of course, there's full import facilities if you want your graphics guys to go away and create something that's completely bespoke to what you're doing. So I'm just going to go on now, and what we'll do is we'll show you the software itself. Now, what I'm going to do is create a fairly simple application, and let's just plug. Sorry, I'm just going to plug the PanelPilot ACE display into my development board. So we're going to create a fairly simple application. You can see the display is now booting up, and I hope that Sam is able to show you this. And what we have here is a temperature display, and you can see as we move up and down that there's just a bar graph as well, and we've also at the bottom of that got a max and min facility, so it's recording the maximum and the minimum temperature that's been displayed at any time. I'm also just going to quickly, we'll start just giving you a quick acclimatization for the software so you can see. So when you first load up the software, you're presented with this welcome screen, and this gives you some guides as to where we'd recommend that you start from. So we have a link to the YouTube channel there, and also the 5 videos, which are kind of the basic ones that we would recommend most people starting with, and that will just give you the grounding that you need to get acclimatized with the software and start to use it. There's a tab down here at the bottom, and you can see if we move over, that's called templates, and we've got over a dozen templates now. We're always adding new ones to this, and these are typical applications which use a lot of the functionality that is available within the PanelPilot ACE platform. We find a lot of users may well start with these, so they might well open one of these. It might be that it's exactly right for their application straight away, in which case they can just go ahead and load that to their hardware. A lot of other users will actually take these and they'll either unpick them to try and understand how they work, or they will take elements of them and copy and paste them onto different projects, and it just gives you a nice starting block. So we just double click on one of these, and that will take us through to the design view. And so, as you can see, this is a template that we provide, but all of the what makes it is available to get in and actually start to adjust. So this is quite a complex template compared to some of the simpler ones, but you can start to get in, you can start to move the elements. We've got the background there and all the different parts here. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to start a completely fresh project. Because we haven't got a huge amount of time, I'm not going to go too fast. So I'll try and talk through what I'm doing as we go through, but this is not a tutorial as such, it's really a demonstration. So if you'd like to start actually getting used to using the software, I think YouTube is the place to go to that. What I'm hoping to show here is how quickly we can create a reasonably advanced application using just drag and drop and the tools that are available here in the software. So I touched on earlier having providing a number of library elements, and these are available to download from the PanelPilot website. So they include a whole host of graphic elements, so buttons, backgrounds, icons, sliders, all the kind of stuff that you can need to create your projects. Of course, I think I may have mentioned, but you can import pretty much any graphic file, PNG, TIFFs, JPEGs, all of that sort of thing can just be put straight in. So if you don't like our graphics, that doesn't matter, you can kind of go and create your own ones. So I've got a background here that I'm going to put in, and I'm just going to position that with the canvas. Now that button I'm going to use for my reset. It's a little bit big, so if I go here to the properties editor, I can just change the size of that, and then I want an icon here so that we know that it acts as the reset. Some other elements that we have available templates. So these aren't full projects. These down here on the left-hand side in the library area are parts of collections of elements which form, for example, meter units or bar graphs or so on. So I'm going to double click on one of these and bring that in. My computer's running a little slow, and you can see, so that's brought in a pre-configured bar graph meter. I'm going to just adapt it a little bit to what I want to use it for. So I'm going to delete the labels that I don't want, and also there's a little shiny graphic effect on the top of it that I can do without. So we're just going to change the labels as well. This is a temperature display, so I have 0 degrees C. I'm sorry for everyone in the North America with where you work with Fahrenheit. We're here in the UK, so We'll go with degree C for the time being. So let's imagine that this is a medical fridge. So our typical values, vaccines should be kept between 2 and 8 degrees. So that seems like a good range to work with. So down here in the library section, I can start to build the visual elements that are going to make up the rest of the project. So we'll put here the text, and we'll change that to white and change the size of that to, let's say, 80 pixels. And I'm going to need to just stretch that text box out there. So that's going to be my main reading. I should have been doing this all along, but I'm just going to make sure that I label these correctly. It's one of the golden rules of programming, and whilst we've said no coding, the naming of elements is still quite an important thing to get right. If you're building up complex multi-screen interfaces, you can quickly find that if you've got all of your images labeled 1, 2, 3, etc., etc., it gets very difficult to go back and tell which one is which without having to click on it. So particularly if anyone else is going to be working on the same project at a later date, or you just want to future-proof it for when you come back in a few months' time, and if you followed a good naming convention, it will ensure that you're able to pick up where you left off, as it were. So we're happy there with our general layout of the screen. Obviously these just are flat text boxes at the moment. What we need to do is actually populate those. So I'm just going to create a couple of variables, and these variables are for the max and min values that we're going to be creating with the project. So we need one for max and one for min. Okay, and now we need to actually add the digital display. So this text box here in the middle, what we want to do is assign a behavior that it's looking for the analog input that we have set up here. Now that analog input was created automatically when we dragged the bar graph in, but we're going to use it because it's the same analog input that we want to use. It's one temperature reading. We can use that multiple times within the project. So we're going to go up here, select the analog input that we have created, and here's how we can scale the display to, in this case, our development board. So you can see here, this development board here is it runs off the USB which powers the device, and it generates a -5 volts to +5 volt rail. So we can use that for testing our analog inputs. So we're going to set that from -5 to 5, and the reading we want is 0 to 10 degrees Celsius. And then we need to choose which text element we're going to send that reading to. So in this case, it's decimal. We want 2 decimal places, and the last thing we can do is put a suffix, so we can put the degree C in there at the end. So that is the digital reading set up and running. Just going to press F5 there, and what this does is opens up an emulator, and this allows us to check the runtime functionality of the project we've created. So you can see here the 2 text boxes at the bottom are still blank. They're just flat text at the moment, but we've now got our bar graph working, and we've got our reading changing now proportional to the analog input. So we now need to go in and create the logic actions which that tie the max and the min functionality together. I'm going to just create a string converter, and what this does is formats the text so that when it appears down here we can put the degree C and we can limit it to decimal places. So again, we're going to use the drop down. We're going to select an element property, and we want the digital display, and we want the scaled analog input. We want to limit it to 2 decimal places, and we want to put the degree C in afterwards. The next thing I need to do is create a property trigger. Now this property trigger is going to, whenever the digital display changes, it's going to call up a logic builder, and that logic builder is going to be the thing that checks for whether the input as it currently stands is higher or lower. And if it's higher than its maximum, it will update the maximum reading, and if it's lower, it will update the minimum reading. So I'm just going to set this up. So the logic statement that we want is to check that the digital display, or the current digital display that's showing, is greater than the maximum variable that we have stored here. And we'll set up the action. So this is like an if-else statement that we're creating here. And we'll set a second statement here for the minimum value. So again, we take the digital display reading, we take the scaled analog reading, and this time we're going to check for it being less than the minimum. I'm just going to check that that's right. Yeah. Okay. So those are our two logic statements. What we want to do is, if those are true, we need to send the value to these text boxes here. So we need to create what's called a set rule. And what this does is it creates, it equates one thing to another thing. So we're going to choose up here, and we're going to call this logic max. And we're going to go in here, and we're actually going to choose the project variable. So the maximum variable, we now want to equate this to the digital display and the current reading. So remember, this set rule has been called because the logic builder has checked and the current reading is higher than the maximum value read so far. So that's setting the variable. And the second thing that we want to do is to equate the text, which is the text max and the text here, and we want to equate that to the string builder. So this is the string converter where we've set the degree C, and we set the decimal places to 2, and so we set that to value. And we need to do that again. I'm going to just copy this because it's quicker. So I've used Control C and Control V. I'm going to change that to min. And then we're just going to switch that. So instead of max, we want min. And here, instead of temp min, and the text value there. And because I've copied it, added an extra function there. Now with the property, sorry, not with the property, I need to go back to the logic builder. So when we have our when our logic statement for the value being higher is true, we want to set the max reading, and when it is true that the reading is lower than the previous lowest, we want to set the minimum. And then the final thing we want to do is, as the digital analog changes, we need to call that logic builder. So we're starting off a chain of actions here that follow one on from the other. The very last thing to do, I hope, before we're done, is to add a button function. And so we're going to take this graphic here, which is image 1, and you can see immediately, because I didn't follow a naming convention, that I've had to go and click on that to find out which image it was. So we choose that from the drop down here. When that is clicked, we want to create one more rule, which is the reset rule. So logic reset, and I'll go in and fill that in a second. Let me just set the, so when that button is clicked, it will run the logic action which fulfills the reset criteria. So there's a few things that we need to just set here. Firstly, we need to create the variables. We need to set those to the current reading. Which is digital display there, and the scaled analog input of that. And we need to do that for both max and min. And it helpfully remembers which was the last element parameter that I chose, so that I can fill these boxes in a little bit quicker. And then we also need to set the text boxes. So we have the text max and the value, and we want to equate that to the string builder. Okay. Right, so for the moment of truth now, we're going to actually, I'll just show you where the emulator is. It's up here in the top drop down here. So if we go File and Preview in Emulator, you can see here that it's only part. It is working. I think there's a couple of things that could be done slightly better, but you can see that the functionality is generally there. As I move up above the maximum reading here, it keeps going up. And as I come down below 2.06, the minimum, and I can just reset that at any time, and that resets those values to the current reading. The other thing I'll do is, because we're plugged in, I think I've used a different color button, so you can see. I'll just show you how quick it is to upload these projects to the device. So I've clicked on upload here. There's a couple of images that I'm not using, and this uses just a mini USB cable to communicate with the PC. You can see it's just a few seconds for it to load that project, and it will then reboot, and you can see we have our project that we have just created. You can see the analog input changing up and down as we move that potentiometer. So I hope that gives you an idea of just how quick it is to create these sorts of applications. Obviously this is a fairly simple one for the purposes of this demonstration. We've got some we've got people using the device for all sorts of things, sometimes with full menu structures, with settings and so on. So the world really, there's no real limit to what you can achieve with this display, and as we add more functionality to the software, those limits will move further away. So I'm just going to go back to the let's just resume the slideshow. There we go. So we completed the demo. Okay, so just recap on what it is that you get. There's two individual part numbers that we're currently selling on the PanelPilot ACE. We have the display, which is the 4.3-inch display, and that comes in this rather nice retail box, and that is available through, of course, Element 14, Allied, and Farnell. And we also have a separate part number, which is the development kit. Now, the development kit is this board. It also includes the 4.3-inch display. It comes in this box just here, and it also includes the cables, and there's some feet that stand this board up a little bit. And what that does is it just means that you've got something that you can test projects without having to connect directly into the back of the display. So it speeds up the process of checking, and you've seen how quick it is to upload a new project to the display. We can very quickly get a project up and running, put it on the dev board, test its functionality. I don't know whether I can show you a bit closer here. Down here on the right-hand side, sorry, the left-hand side, there's the four analog inputs. up here at the top, we have the digital I/O, so these can either be assigned as inputs or outputs, with some little dip switches there that you can trigger those with, and there's also a row of LEDs along here to show you if you're using them as outputs. We've also got some variable LEDs for the PWM outputs. There's the serial communication here. So it's just a very quick way of getting started with this range, and we recommend if it's something you're considering for your next project, that you're better off starting with the development kit. With the simplicity of the software, with the learning materials that we have available, we think that most people can be up and running within about 30 minutes of getting this package. So we'd love you to take us up on that challenge and let us know how you get on. So where are we going next with the platform? Well, perhaps most exciting for me, because I'm a hardware guy, we have the 7-inch version of the PanelPilot ACE coming, and this should be available certainly by the end of the first quarter of 2016. I'm just going to hold it next to the 4.3 so you can see the difference in size there. This 7-inch display has a fair bit more processing power under its bonnet. There's a dual-core ARM processor there running embedded Linux. It just gives those who are wanting to run really complex applications a little bit more headroom, and we're also adding some new functionality. One that's imminent is data logging. I don't know whether you're familiar with Lascar as an organization, but we, as well as our displays, we also make data loggers, our EasyLog data loggers. So we're bringing that functionality to the display platform. So it allows you to do real-time data logging during runtime, and as well as logging the data, you can also use the display to display a trend graph. You can see it here, down here on the right-hand side, just on that dummy 7-inch display. That's showing a trend graph, and that's something that's going to be available, I think, probably the other side of Christmas, but certainly very, very early in the new year, if not before. We've also got a couple of add-on boards that are in the works at the moment. We have temperature and humidity add-on boards, and also an AC power monitoring board that's coming for those of you who are into that side of things. So that comes to the end of my presentation side of things. I need to have a check with Dave just to see, because I can't see any questions if there have been any. We've got some time now to go through them if I'm able to access those. If not, then you can see here on the slide on the right-hand side that we do have an email available, tech@panelpilot.com. So any questions that you may have, you can go ahead and send them through to us, and our team will be only too happy to answer those. Just a quick thing on support, local support here. We are based here in the UK, but we do have an office in Erie, Pennsylvania. So any of those of you in North America or South America, there is local support. There's some excellent sales support there and some technical support. So if you're interested in this product, give the guys over in Erie a call. Obviously, if you're in Europe, call us here in the UK. So we'd be looking forward to hearing from you. Okay, that's me done. I'll hand back over to Dave, and hopefully he'll be able to get me to see any Q&As that have popped up.
Well, thanks. First of all, thanks, Ben, for a great presentation. Learned a lot, and we had a couple of questions that pop up, and rather than having you fish through the WebEx ether, I'll just ask them to you here. The first question is the display isolated from the environment? That comes from one of our top members, Dab. I'll repeat the question here. Is the display isolated from the environment?
No, it's not. So you would need to create some isolation yourself. We do have plans to create a isolated add-on board. So that will isolate your inputs, your digital inputs, your analog inputs. And that, I guess, for more industrial environments is going to be an important thing to have. So it's very much on our mind. At the moment, you'd need to provide that protection yourself.
Okay, great, thanks. Second question, also from Dab, what are some of the costs associated? Now, I believe that you had mentioned that software itself was free, but can you maybe go into some of the costs of the actual hardware and screens that you talked about?
Yeah, and this kind of goes together, I suppose, with the previous question. The cost of this display compared to your typical HMI display is quite a lot lower. So our one-off price advertised through Lascar is $275 or £170 in Europe, and with the development board that goes up to $500 or £300 here in the UK. So we're operating at a different price point, and for that kind of price point, we weren't able to provide the isolation. As soon as we start putting that in, it adds tens and tens of dollars very quickly to the bill of materials. So, but we certainly think it's a competitive price compared to a lot of the other displays in the market.
Okay, cool. Thank you. If anyone has any other questions, we'll give it a couple more minutes here, more seconds, actually, about 30 seconds left to answer any questions. If you think of something later on or just didn't really feel comfortable or really know what questions you wanted to ask here, like Ben had mentioned, you can email Ben at tech@panelpilot.com, or you also have the opportunity, you can ask questions in the comment section of the event page you registered from on the Element 14 community, and we'll make sure we get those questions over to Ben as well. So give it a few more seconds here, and just wanted to let everyone know that this is actually our last webinar of 2015. So thank you for those I see on the participant list who are some of our regulars. The webinar series, we're going to pick back up in early January 2016. And more information will be available on those events on element14.com/webinars. So as I mentioned before, this event has been recorded and will be posted on the Element 14 community, particularly on the event page in which you registered from on the webinar recording tab, in a couple of hours here after we get it down and get it converted. So looks like we do have one more question popped up, and this is from Richard. Ben, what is the price for a 7-inch screen? Just an approximate cost would be fine.
The price on the 7-inch is £295, and I think we're going in at $470. I need to confirm on the 7-inch on the dollar price, but it's going to be in that ballpark.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay. Like I said, if there are any other questions, feel free to get a hold of Ben and the technical support team at tech@panelpilot.com, or let us know in the community what your questions are. We'll make sure to get those answered. Take the opportunity to say thank you again to Ben and to Lascar Electronics for a great presentation, and we look forward to the recording and, I don't know, maybe some more webinars and maybe even a road test down the line with Lascar and PanelPilot ACE. So. Thanks again, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thanks all. Goodbye.